Chapter 1. The Shaking Child. The Veritas thrummed beneath Ethan Carter's feet, the rhythmic hum of the starship's engines vibrating to the metal floor, a constant reminder that they were orbiting the far-off station of Zephyra, a hub of trade and alien cultures. Zephyr was a place where technology, ancient histories, and diverse species collided. Yet even here, in this melting pot of the galaxy, Ethan had never encountered anything quite like this. He had just finished a routine scan of the ship's systems when an emergency call came through, a child in the medical wing, shaking uncontrollably. At first, he assumed it was a malfunction in one of the station's gravity generators. But when he arrived, the sight of the child was nothing short of chilling. A young alien girl, barely 6 cycles old, lay on one of the cold metal tables, her body racked with violent tremors. Her skin was a soft, luminescent blue, translucent in places, showing the faint traces of veins beneath her surface. Her large, black eyes fluttered in distress, unblinking, as though seeing everything but unable to comprehend it. She was gasping for breath, her tiny chest rising and falling with each shaky inhale. Ethan's gaze flicked to the boy who had brought her in, Tarek, the girl's older brother, standing anxiously by her side. His dark, obsidian skin shimmered in the dim light of the medical room, and his glowing green eyes reflected a helpless fear. Despite the alien nature of his features, there was something universally human about the look in his eyes, the kind of raw panic that only a sibling could feel. Ethan quickly moved to the table, his practiced hands already moving, pulling diagnostic tools from the drawers that lined the walls. The room hummed with the soft whirring of medical machinery, a sterile environment, but the air had a faint metallic tang, mingling with the subtle scent of alien flora from the station's greenhouses. "She won't stop shaking," Tarek said, his voice tight with distress. His hands hovered, unsure, just above his sister's trembling form. "Please, human, help her." Ethan didn't hesitate. He glanced at Tarek, his expression calm but focused. "I'm going to do everything I can, but I need you to trust me," he said, his voice steady, though his heart raced. With a gentle but firm motion, he pressed his fingers to the girl's trembling wrist, his med scanner whirring to life, emitting a soft blue glow. As the device pulsed, Ethan felt a jolt of concern. The readings were unusual. There was no sign of physical injury or illness, no infection, no trauma, no dehydration. He took a deep breath, tried to steady his nerves. This was something more. "You're not from around here, are you?" Ethan asked softly, turning his attention to Tarek, who looked up at him, clearly struggling to understand the human's tone. Tarek's eyes flickered, a shade of confusion passing across his face. His people weren't used to speaking with humans outside of business exchanges, and emotions like these weren't often shown so openly in his culture. Yet, in this moment, he appeared to be almost pleading. "No, we are from Dharka. Our ancestors had disappeared long ago," Tarek murmured, his voice distant, almost as if he were speaking more to himself than Ethan. The shaking, it's a curse." Ethan's brow furrowed, his mind racing. A curse? He had no answer for that. But in a galaxy where energy fields and species with abilities far beyond human comprehension were commonplace, perhaps the impossible wasn't so impossible. He glanced back at the girl. Her trembling had lessened slightly, but the unnatural shaking remained, like an old machine struggling to function after too many repairs. The room felt colder now, the hum of the ship's engines in the distance vibrating strangely through the walls. There was something alien in the atmosphere, something that made the hairs on the back of Ethan's neck prickle with unease. "Tarek," Ethan said, glancing up with a soft, reassuring smile, though it was forced. "I'm going to find out what this is. I promise you." But inside, Ethan wasn't so sure. The look in Tarek's eyes, those wide, glowing green orbs, told him there was something far darker at work here than a simple illness, something far more ancient. And Ethan had a feeling this was only the beginning. Chapter 2, A Human's Touch. The neon lights of Zephyr Station flickered above Ethan as he walked to the crowded marketplace, the rhythmic thrum of the Veritas faint in the distance. It was a sensory overload, alien voices speaking in dozens of languages, the clash of high-tech and organic goods, and the strange scent of spices and unfamiliar foods wafting through the air. Humans were a minority here. They're sleek, white uniforms standing out amidst the colorful displays of alien artifacts and textiles. It was a world of contradictions. Futuristic tech in the hands of species that hadn't even mastered the concept of peace. Ethan's mind, however, was consumed by the girl in his medical bay. Zyra, her name had been, and the more he thought about it, the more something about her condition gnawed at him. The tremors hadn't been caused by any physical injury or illness he could recognize. The strange, almost ritualistic shaking. He had to admit, it didn't fit the profile of any sickness he'd ever encountered. Ethan stopped at a vendor, pretending to browse a set of shimmering stones, his eyes scanning the crowd for a familiar face. He had to find answers, and there was only one person on Zephyr who might have them. Rule, the elder of the Gaelti, a species as old as the station itself. The Gaelti were known for their wisdom, their ancient ways, and their access to knowledge long lost to the rest of the galaxy. But they were also a reclusive people, rarely interacted with others unless necessary. Looking for something specific, human? A voice broke through his thoughts. Ethan turned to find Tarek standing behind him, his black eyes glinting with a mix of worry and gratitude. "I'm looking for someone who might know about your sister's condition," Ethan said, his voice low. "Errol. He's the only one on this station who might understand what's happening." Tarek's gaze darkened, and for a moment, Ethan saw hesitation flicker in his eyes. The boy's lips pressed together, and his hand fidgeted with the edge of his tunic. Ethan had the distinct feeling Tarek wasn't used to asking for help. He was a protector, not someone who relied on others. "Errol is not one to share knowledge freely," Tarek said quietly, his voice almost reverent. "He speaks only in riddles, and his people, they guard their secrets like they guard their lives. They don't trust humans." Ethan nodded, understanding the hesitation. The Gaelti weren't known for their kindness toward outsiders, but there was no time to waste. Zyra's condition was worsening with every hour. "I'm not asking him for friendship," Ethan replied, his eyes narrowing with determination. "I just need answers. I won't leave until I get them." He stepped forward, reaching for the door. As his hand touched the cool surface, it slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the darkened chamber within. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and a low hum vibrated through the walls, almost like the station itself was alive. In the center of the room sat Errol. The Gaelti elder was a towering figure, his skin a deep, iridescent purple that shimmered in the dim light, his eyes glowing with an ancient intelligence. He regarded Ethan and Tarek with an expression of measured curiosity, his long fingers resting on the arm of the throne-like chair he occupied. "You seek answers, human." Errol's voice echoed in the room, deep and resonant. "But knowledge comes at a price, and you must first prove you are worthy of it." Ethan stood tall, meeting the elder's gaze, his heart steady despite the weight of the moment. "I'm not here to beg," Ethan said firmly. "I just need to know what's happening to Zyra. She's suffering, and I will do whatever it takes to help her." Errol's lips curved into a faint smile, but there was no warmth in it, only an eerie, calculating intelligence. "Then you must first understand something deeper than medicine. Human. You must understand the cost of saving a life." Tarek stepped forward, his voice quiet but urgent. "Please, Errol, my sister is dying." The elder's gaze softened, just a fraction, and for the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of something resembling empathy. "Then, perhaps, Erul said slowly, "You are ready to hear the truth. But be warned, human. The truth may be more than you can bear." The room seemed to grow colder as Ethan stepped forward, his mind racing, bracing himself for the knowledge that could change everything. Chapter 3. Into the Wilds of Ralix. The Veritas glided effortlessly through the void of space, its sleek hull a stark contrast against the swirling nebulae that dotted the galactic horizon. Ethan stood at the observation window, staring out at the stars, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the floor beneath him. Zephyr Station was behind him now, and ahead lay the barren moon of Ralix, a desolate rock orbiting a dying star, its surface scarred by centuries of meteor impacts and harsh winds. The memory of Erul's cryptic words still echoed in Ethan's mind. The Elder had given him only one option: to travel to Ralix, retrieve a rare plant known as Solara's blossom, and bring it back in time to save Zyra. It was said to grow in a temple deep within the moon's unforgiving desert, guarded by dangers few had ever survived. As the ship descended through Ralix's thin atmosphere, Ethan's heart raced, not just from the turbulence, but from the weight of what lay ahead. This wasn't just a mission to collect a plant. This was about more than saving Zyra. It was about proving to himself that he could make a difference in a galaxy full of alien species that viewed humans as nothing more than a curiosity. Tark was silent beside him, staring out at the barren landscape below. His usually stoic face betrayed a mixture of fear and determination, his fists clenched tightly by his sides. "You've been to Ralix before, haven't you?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence, his voice cutting to the whir of the ship's controls. Tark nodded, his gaze never leaving the window. "I have," he said quietly, his tone heavy with memories. "It's a cursed place. Only the strong survive the journey." Ethan glanced at him. "Why? What makes it so dangerous?" "The storms," Tark said, his eyes darkening. "The creatures. The ruins. No one who enters the desert ever returns the same." The ship lurched as it made its final descent, breaking through the atmosphere and touching down with a soft thud on the dry, cracked surface of Ralix. The planet was bathed in the dim light of the dying star, the ground below a stark, reddish-brown wasteland, dotted with ancient ruins and twisted rock formations. "Welcome to Ralix," Tark muttered under his breath, his voice laced with something that sounded like both resignation and fear. Ethan buckled into a seat, feeling the familiar weightlessness of zero gravity as the ship's landing ramp lowered with a hiss. The blistering wind of Ralix rushed in, carrying the scent of dust and burning metal, the kind of dry heat that made the skin crawl. They suited up quickly, pulling on their desert gear, protective suits with filtration masks and breathing apparatus, necessary for the planet's barely breathable atmosphere. The desert was unlike anything Ethan had ever experienced. The sun was cruel here, casting long shadows over cracked, dry earth, while the air shimmered with heat. Once outside, the landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, a vast expanse of sand dunes, jagged rock formations, and the occasional skeletal ruin of a long-forgotten civilization. Ethan squinted against the glare of the twin suns overhead, trying to adjust to the alien world. Tark led the way, his movements sure and practiced, his eyes scanning the horizon with a vigilance born from experience. Ethan followed, his boots crunching on the dry sand, the heat seeping through his suit. His mind raced as they trudged forward, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. The sand beneath their feet seemed to shift, as if the planet itself was alive, waiting to swallow them whole. Ethan's eyes darted the horizon, where dark clouds were beginning to form, raucous, swirling masses of storm and dust, their whirling fury an omen of what was to come. Tark's voice broke through the tense silence. "We need to get to the temple before the storm hits. It'll be here soon." Ethan nodded, his pace quickening as they moved toward the distant ruins. As they neared the temple, the wind picked up, howling across the sand, biting at their exposed skin. The ancient structure loomed ahead, half buried in the sand, its stone pillars cracked and weathered by time. The entrance was dark, the shadows inside deep and foreboding, but there was no turning back now. They stepped into the temple, the temperature dropping sharply as they passed through the archway. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old stone and dust. The walls were lined with intricate carvings, telling stories of ancient gods and long-lost civilizations. The faint glow of the stars outside filtered through cracks in the stone, casting eerie light on the crumbling walls. Ethan pulled a scanner from his belt and began searching the room, scanning the floor, the walls, anything that might lead him to the Solara's blossom. The plant, as described by Rule, was rare and delicate, blooming only once every few years under the light of the twin suns. But it wasn't the plant that worried him now. It was what guarded it. Tarek moved silently beside him, his eyes flicking to the shadows. "The Guardians will be close," he muttered. Ethan didn't have to ask. He'd read about the Sandstriders, the massive, camouflaged creatures that roamed the desert, attacking anyone who ventured too far from shelter. But he hadn't anticipated how terrifying they would be up close. A low growl echoed through the temple, vibrating the floor beneath them. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as a massive shape moved in the darkness, its form shifting like a mirage. The Sandstrider was nearly the size of a small ship, its body covered in scales that reflected the dim light like the polished surface of a mirror. Its eyes, glowing faintly red, locked onto them, hungry and relentless. Suddenly, a flash of movement. Solara appeared out of nowhere, her blade flashing in the low light. She sliced through the raider's armor with a clean, effortless motion, the blade moving like liquid metal. The man collapsed, the fight gone out of him. Eli gasped for air, staring up at the ceiling as the adrenaline slowly ebbed from his system. His body ached, but he was alive. Solara knelt beside him, her expression unreadable. Her eyes, dark and steady, never left him as she offered a hand. "You're still alive," she said, her voice tinged with something. Relief, maybe? It was hard to tell, but that was close. Eli grasped her hand and allowed her to pull him up, his legs shaky beneath him. The hum of the station's alarm still blared in his ears, but it was quieter now, as if the world had slowed down. That was insane, he breathed, wiping sweat from his brow. What the hell happened? Sorala's gaze shifted to the bodies of the raiders, now scattered across the floor, incapacitated. Mercenaries, paid to destroy the reactor. Their targets are the core systems. They want to destabilize the station, draw it into enemy hands. Eli nodded, piecing it together. Who's behind it? Sorala's eyes flickered with an intensity that sent a shiver down Eli's spine. "I don't know, but they won't stop until they finish the job." They were interrupted by the sharp hiss of the station's emergency doors, sliding open. Eli spun around to see the station security team, rifles at the ready, flooding into the room. One of the officers gave them a curt nod. "The situation's contained. You two saved the core systems from going critical." He looked between Solara and Eli. "But I need to ask, what were you two doing here?" Before Solara could speak, Eli stepped forward, his chest still heaving with the aftermath of the fight. "We're the ones who stopped them, and we're the ones who will keep the station from falling apart." Solara glanced at Eli, a quiet understanding passing between them. She didn't need to say anything. He'd just proven himself in a way few humans could. As the security team took over, and the sounds of their voices grew distant, Eli turned to Solara. For a brief moment, there was nothing but the echo of their shared breaths and the steady hum of the station systems in the background. "I'm not a soldier, Solara," Eli said, his voice steady but quieter now. "But I've got your back." Solara studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. Her lips quirked slightly, the first flicker of something resembling respect, and maybe just maybe something more dancing in her eyes. "Perhaps you're not so human after all," she replied, a subtle grin tugging at the corner of her lips. Chapter 4. The Weight of Honor. The stars outside the station's viewport flickered like distant diamonds, each one a small, glowing promise of the vast unknown. The soft pulse of artificial gravity hummed through the metal walls, keeping everything grounded, but inside Eli's chest nothing felt steady. As he looked at Solara, standing tall, her Karath warrior's cloak billowing slightly as if caught in a breeze that wasn't there, he felt the weight of something much heavier than gravity pressing on his shoulders. The Alderaan Gateway had never felt so far from home. They were about aboard a ship bound for the Karath Dominion, Sorala's home. The call had come from her people. She was to return and face trial. Word of her dishonor had spread beyond the station's walls, reaching the ears of her clan's leaders, and now it was time for her to answer for it. They couldn't have known what happened between her and Eli, not exactly, but they would see the human woman's proximity as a breach of Karath tradition. Solara had tried to tell Eli this was the end. She would face the trial alone, and he should remain behind. But Eli had made up his mind long before she finished speaking. She might have been a warrior, proud and fierce, but Eli was no stranger to fighting for what he cared about. And what he cared about now was Solara. "I'll go with you," Eli had insisted, his voice steady. He hadn't even known why, but the words had felt right, like they were always meant to be said. "You don't have to face this alone." She had said nothing for a long time, her eyes unreadable. Her people valued strength and pride above all else, and his words, his offer to stand by her, were foreign, even uncomfortable. But in the end, she had given a single silent nod. The decision was made. And now, as they boarded the Kavalan, a sleek, black warship from her people, it felt like the weight of her entire world was bearing down on both of them. The ship's interior was stark and intimidating, its walls of polished black metal reflecting the harsh light of overhead lamps. The floor vibrated beneath Eli's boots as the ship powered up. Everything inside the Kavalan was designed for battle. The corridors were narrow, and the air was thick with the scent of metal and alien perfumes. His mind wandered back to Earth, back to the smells of fresh air, grass, and open fields, but those thoughts felt distant now. He was far from home, and even farther from understanding the complex customs and politics of the Karath. Solara stood by the viewport, her figure silhouetted against the stars. Her Karath features were always striking, but today her posture was less regal and more burdened. She wasn't the confident warrior Eli had first met. Now she seemed smaller somehow, vulnerable. "What's going to happen?" Eli asked, stepping closer, his voice low and calm. Solara didn't turn to face him immediately. Her hands were clasped behind her back, the movement a silent sign of her discomfort. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice rougher than usual. "They will sentence me to a punishment. It is the way of the Karath. Honor is everything. Without it, you are nothing." Her words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and Eli's heart clenched. He'd known her pride ran deep, but hearing her admit out loud made the weight of the situation all the more real. "You won't be nothing," Eli replied quietly. "Not to me, and I'm not going anywhere. You said it yourself. We're in this together." Solara turned then, her eyes meeting his. There was a flicker of something in them. Something soft but fleeting before it was masked by the cold, distant mask of a warrior once more. "You have no idea what it means to be Karath," she said. "You cannot understand the weight of my dishonor." Eli took a step forward, closing the gap between them. His voice dropped to a whisper, but the conviction in it was palpable. "Maybe not, but I do understand what it means to stand by someone, to choose someone even when it's hard, even when it seems impossible." For a moment, they stood in silence. The stars outside the viewport seemed to stretch on forever, and Eli felt the weight of space itself pressing in on him, making him feel small and insignificant. But in that moment, standing next to Solara, he didn't feel alone. There was something about her, something raw and real, that pulled him closer, even when it didn't make sense. Solara finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. In the Karat Dominion, you cannot choose your fate. It is chosen for you. I am no exception. But you're human, Eli replied softly, and humans get to choose. That's what makes us special. We get to make our own destiny. Her eyes softened just for a moment. Maybe you're right. The words were tentative, uncertain. But they were there. Chapter 5. What surprised us both. The high chamber of the Karat Dominion Tribunal was an intimidating sight, a vast and cold expanse of polished black stone, filled with towering statues of long-forgotten Kareth warriors, each one depicted in dramatic, powerful poses, their faces stern and unyielding. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, sharp and almost metallic, mingling with the tension that hung over the room like a heavy storm cloud. Solara stood at the center of the room, her back straight and her eyes fixed ahead, though the hard set of her jaw betrayed a nervous energy. She had dressed in ceremonial garb for the trial, a deep, blood-red tunic of woven Kareth fiber, embroidered with the intricate patterns that marked her lineage. Her collar blade was sheathed across her back, but the ceremonial armor she wore could not hide the tension in her shoulders. Eli stood beside her, feeling as out of place as a human could possibly feel. The cold, high ceilings loomed above them, a reminder that they were in the heart of the Karat Dominion. He could feel the weight of the stairs from the surrounding council members, the elders and warriors' sharp, unblinking eyes that seemed to look right through him. He swallowed hard, trying to suppress the sense of being completely dwarfed by their presence. Solara of the Karat Dominion, the voice of Solara, the High Matriarch, rang out, her words echoing through the chamber with the weight of authority. She stepped forward from behind a raised dais, her long robe flowing as she moved. The Kareth elders, seated on a high platform above, all regarded Solara with a quiet, intense scrutiny. You stand before this tribunal accused of dishonoring the ancient traditions of your people. You have allied with a human, one of the lesser species of the galaxy. You have compromised the pride and integrity of the Kareth, and for this, you are unworthy of your name. Your fate is sealed. Eli felt the weight of Zalora's words like a physical blow, the finality in her voice enough to make him want to shrink back into the shadows. But Solara didn't flinch. Instead, her chin lifted, and the faintest glimmer of defiance flashed across her face. Zalora, asterisk, asterisk. Sorala's voice rang clear and strong, though there was a slight tremor in her tone. I do not deny that I have broken the traditions, but you are wrong if you think this is dishonor. I have not allowed myself to be controlled by customs that bind us, suffocate us. The Kareth were meant to be strong, individuals, not slaves to rituals. The room fell silent, the council members exchanging sharp glances. Eli could feel the tension thicken, a palpable pressure that weighed on everyone present. His eyes flicked to Solara. She was standing tall, but the vulnerability in her eyes was still there, hidden behind the walls of her pride. But she was doing something extraordinary. For the first time since meeting her, Eli saw the full measure of her courage. Zalora's gaze darkened, the elder matriarch's eyes narrowing in disdain. You speak of strength, yet you have compromised the honor of your people, one of the oldest traditions in the Kareth Dominion. And now, you bring this human, this creature from a lesser species, to defend you. Eli took a deep breath, his chest tightening. He had no place here. He wasn't Kareth. He wasn't a warrior. But he couldn't just stand by and let them tear her down. He had to try. He stepped forward, his boots clanging against the cold stone floor. The entire room went still, and every eye in the chamber turned toward him. His heart raced, but he stood his ground, his posture straight as he faced the council, the elder matriarch, and the legion of Kareth warriors around him. I may not understand your ways, but I understand what it means to stand by someone, Eli said, his voice steady but his pulse pounding in his ears. Solara hasn't betrayed her people. She's simply chosen a different path. She chose to stand up for what she believes in. Zalora's gaze shifted, her lips curling into a thin, imperceptible smile. But it wasn't a smile of approval. You, a human, dare speak for her? You, who know nothing of honor, of the sacrifice that comes with true strength. Eli didn't falter. I may be human, and that means I don't know your customs. But I know this. Honor isn't just about following tradition blindly. It's about being loyal to the people who matter. It's about making choices that matter, even when it's hard. He turned to Solara then, his eyes softening just a little. Solara doesn't deserve to be punished for finding a different way. She deserves respect, for her strength, her loyalty, and for her courage to change, to choose her own destiny. Chapter 6, A New Gravity. The stars outside the station's viewport had shifted since their arrival at the Kareth homeworld. From a massive Kavalan warship, the infinite darkness of space seemed more distant, even colder, than Eli had ever imagined. But it wasn't the stars that held his attention now. It was the quiet hum of the ship's systems, the soft pulse of artificial gravity beneath his feet, and the ever-present sense of change. The tribunal had spoken. Solara had been given a chance to prove her worth. And as the Kareth Council had reluctantly agreed, the human, Eli, was allowed to accompany her, though his presence here would forever be viewed with suspicion by many. Eli leaned against the viewport, watching as Kareth ships of various shapes and sizes glided across the surface of their planet, landing and taking off with military precision. The capital city of Volthor stretched out below them, sprawling with its towering obsidian spires and intricately woven bridges that arced across wide, canyon-like gaps. Its architecture, grand and imposing, was as much a reflection of the Kareth philosophy as it was of their immense pride. Solid, unyielding, built for the ages. Solara stood beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon, but there was something different about her today. The lines of tension that had marked her face when they first arrived were gone. She still held herself with a warrior's grace, but there was a softness in her gaze now, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel until this moment. They had fought together, stood together, and through it all, they had discovered something neither of them had expected. Eli wasn't sure when it happened. Maybe it was in the middle of the battle against the mercenaries or the tense standoff in Tribunal. But somewhere along the way, the gap between them had closed. Now, in the silence of the ship's bridge, they stood side by side, not as a human and an alien, but as companions. "Solara," Eli said, his voice breaking the quiet. "What happens now?" She didn't immediately answer. Her gaze drifted over the Kareth landscape below, the spires and streets of Volthor glimmering like obsidian teeth in the fading light of the twin suns. For a moment, she looked distant, as if the weight of her future was pressing on her mind. But then she turned to him, her dark eyes locking onto his. "I don't know," she admitted. "The Council has allowed me to prove myself, but that's all it is, an opportunity. I have to face the challenges they set before me, and I must do so alone. But the rules of the Kareth are harsh. If I fail, the consequences will be dire, not just for me, but for my people." Eli stepped closer, his heart pounding with the weight of her words. "You won't fail, Solara. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met.